recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles. This is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast.
Let's go roast hot dogs down by the Tiki Hut. I'm Anthony.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
I'm Jim.
I'm Kevin.
Welcome to a very special creator interview for the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. Today, we have the creator of To Fight a Hessian and the brand new release of the California Kids. We have Kevin Wolf, a.k.a. Happy Wolfhard. How's it going, Kevin?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
Excellent. So, a couple episodes back on the Crimson Cowl Comic Club proper, myself and Kirby have went through to talk about To Fight a Hessian. We'll cover that later on into this interview here. But the main thing that we are here to promote is the brand new release of the California Kids. But in order to learn more about that, we would like to learn a little more about Kevin Wolf. So if you had checked out the show that I host alongside my cartoonist friends, Cartoonist by Night, we had Kevin on to talk about newspaper comics. So we did get a little history lesson on that. But if you haven't checked that out, we're going to dive in deep right now and basically learn about Kevin Wolf and his artistic journey. So I'll kind of kick it off first just by asking, like, when do you remember that art came into your life? What time of your life?
Yeah, early on in elementary school, obviously, there's art classes, the comics, the weekly, specifically the Sunday morning comics, trying to draw those characters. And then in elementary school, I had some really good art teachers, and so early on, definitely for sure. And then middle school, it really took off. When I started surfing. For some reason, it's very connected to surfing. And I started, my dad used to work at a paper mill. So he would bring home cardboard and all kinds of paper. And I would cut out these large surfboards and draw designs on them and stuff. And so all the cartoon Sunday morning stuff is very connected to it. And then the surfing stuff too. So.
Cool. And so as you go through school, is there a certain moment that you that kind of hit you on realizing that you were going to do this kind of long term where, like through my artistic journey, I've definitely put away from time to time and come back to it. How have you been with the consistency of drawing since the middle school days?
Yeah, definitely. It's been with me the entire time. But like you, I've had to sort of set it aside as far as really working on projects and all that. Through high school, it was really intense, and I got real serious about it. Into junior college, my sort of BA years, I was drawing a lot outdoors, just going on sort of adventures outdoors, and I draw just landscapes and stuff. But then once I got into my later studies and all the time that took, it sort of pushed it to the side. And I was still sketching here and there, but not really consistently. Yeah.
And when you put that stuff away, did you end up, you've written some stuff, we'll see that with the California Kids where it's mostly prose, but you still have some images in there. I'm going to bring this up on the share screen here because you wrote this here. So can you kind of talk about what led to this part of your creative journey?
Yeah. Let's see. Something happened, so I don't see the screen.
Okay, so I have the medieval tales from the Bard, Iron Tongue, up on I think
okay.
everyone should see it.
Yeah, I wonder. Oh, okay. Yeah, something happened to my screen. Okay, yeah. So the medieval bards, those are prose short stories. And I wrote those after I finished my doctorate, and I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, taking care of my daughter, and she was really young. 4 months old is when we sort of finished our schooling and got work, and so I was working on these. Oh, did I lose you guys?
Oh, nope, you're good. I just went off the share screen, so we're here.
Okay. Okay. On my end, I'm not seeing anything at the moment, but yeah. So as I was taking care of her and raising her, I was thinking about these stories and reading a lot of history and composing them a lot of times in my mind when we're at the playground and stuff like that. And then I would get back and write them down. And then when she was sleeping or taking naps, I would be typing them up. But yeah.
Cool. And that's available on Amazon, is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yep, it is. Yeah, there's I think there's a collection. It's a collection of like 6 stories, if I remember all together. And they are sort of this medieval time period. They follow Germanic lords, sort of the tribal period of Europe. And at that time, I was really interested in the transition from ancestral religion to Christianity. And so they have these historical documents from back then, but they're relatively short. So sometimes they're a paragraph or a page. And so these stories are me fleshing them out into a fictional story of how these conversions could have happened, and creating a narrative and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. And with you possibly not seeing the Zoom screen for the share screen, but I'm putting up the Goofy with the surfboard if you want to talk about that image that our audience is seeing.
Oh yeah, actually I'm seeing it, so it's working
Okay,
out.
cool.
Yeah, this is you can see the old Goofy comic in the background.
I like it.
Yeah, oh thanks. This is so I cut out the individual pages and I pasted it so you can read the comic sort of behind the painting. And Goofy is buying a surfboard and he's going surfing. The one change I did make to the page is the newspaper down in the left-hand corner. It's originally said crime wave sweeps the city or hits the city, and I put huge waves because he's going surfing, and then I painted over it. And so that's sort of my avatar on YouTube. That image.
That's excellent. I'm going to jump over to this image here if you want to talk about this one.
Yeah, this is a fun piece. So that's Morro Rock from Morro Bay in the background. And this is from a friend comes up here and camps with her family each year, and her daughter was skateboarding at the campground we're staying at, and she was practicing her ollie. And so that's where the initial image comes from, and they love the Central Coast up here where I live. And so I thought, well, the yellow brick road, right? It leads to the Morro Bay area, Central Coast for them. And so that's the idea. And then I threw in some wildflowers and a big sky and stuff. Yeah.
That's some awesome detail on the flowers there.
Oh, thanks. I didn't attempt to put in the wheels because of perspective and stuff, but it's sort of not necessary for the piece. So.
Yeah. You leave a little something for the viewer to imagine, give them something to think about.
Yeah.
And then one more that I'll queue up before we start jumping into your published work here, but let's talk about this one.
Yeah, this one is actually an original drawing my daughter did on a piece of paper, and she did it with these really long legs, almost this foreshortening, and so I did it on a panel board with paint, acrylic, and watered down the acrylic so you can see sort of the brush strokes of me spreading it out on the paper. And I just loved the design. She captured something really fun in it, and so I pretty much mimicked what she did, and then I added sort of that stained glass hair style to it.
Very cool. All right, what we're going to do here is going to start diving into your work, and then if anybody has any questions, feel free to do the raise hand thing, and we'll filter them in. Now, a couple episodes back, I forget which one, but Kirby and I had went through and talked about To Fight a Hessian. We've seen that advertised. We met you through the All Yeah Comics fan community, being part of like Art Balthazar's, live streams and things like that. And eventually just finding out that you made your own stuff and created your own art, your own stories. And myself and Kirby had gotten our hands on To Fight a Hessian. And so if you want kind of some more in-depth kind of review of that, you can go check out the video portion of that. That might not be available on the audio feed at the moment because those ones get cycled out. But you can definitely go back on the video feed for that one. But can you just kind of talk about an overview of what this story is all about?
Yeah, To Fight a Hessian. So that's a autobiographical in a sense, but it's also fictional. It's a middle school story of a fight that I got in middle school. and the Hessian, Eddie is his name, is the redheaded character on the left with the guitar, and sort of the me character is the surfer there. And I really appreciated Mr. Kleinhan's review of it. He identified with the Hessian character, and he made some really insightful comments about how it is a story sort of bullying in a sense, but just kids mistreating each other and how to deal with that. And so it's told from my perspective, and so Kirby, can I call you Kirby? It's shorter than Kleinhans, but
Yes, I prefer it.
okay.
I was going to tell you that before we started. I totally forgot.
Oh yeah. So Kirby mentioned that that the me character often has some pretty cutting words and does a bit of bullying of his own. And so the story is just really about youth and figuring out how to get along and how to deal with conflicts, facing fears, and sort of figuring out one's limits. And there's a bit of shame involved in the story. Because, well, I don't want to spoil it. I didn't win the fight. So,
And
anyway.
These are presented through a short story and the comic. Can you kind of talk about why there's two versions of this that exist and how they can coexist together?
Yeah, that's something that I've always so I've always thought about this when we buy a comic book from a creator, right? You buy one comic and then you're done purchasing from them, and it's really good, right? The comic, but sometimes you want more. And so I started thinking about this. How can I create something that you can experience on different levels? And it also creates more product that I can sell and hopefully earn a little bit of an income through. And so I thought, I'm gonna do a quick version, a comic version, and it's 10 pages, so it's pretty fast read. But there's the prose version, which is a lot more detail, and you can get into the story more. So, Anthony, you brought up it's sort of like if you go see a movie and you enjoy it, and the movie's based on a book, and then you can go read the book, and sort of get some background or some more information. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of extending that, getting, quote unquote deleted scenes in a way where you're just like, hey, I want to learn more about this. And so yeah, I enjoyed it on that level. Now we've talked about this and I forget which order I actually read it in now, but it's all recorded in history on YouTube, so you can see what I said back then. But I do always kind of appreciate stories that way where if something's coming out, I don't necessarily need to be reading the book or this or that. I just kind of go in and whatever version is more accessible at the time. And then if I really dig whatever version, I usually go back and seek out more and get other takes on it and stuff. So, but yeah, very
I would
well.
say if there is like maybe an ideal way of reading it, I would probably suggest the comic first, because it is a really quick read. And then you sort of get the characters and their visuals in your mind. And then when you read through the story, it gives you more. And then there's notes, obviously, in the background about, or at the back of the books, about the art or about experiences in the story that I didn't include in the story. So there's a going shopping with mom scene. And there's a lot of sort of childhood experiences with that, about the significance of it and why it was really fun to go shopping with mom and stuff like that. But it wouldn't have fit into the story. So I put those notes in the background, and that's another way of experiencing the story too. So
yeah, I did read the comic first, and then I read the prose. And it was a good way to do it because it filled in those little blanks and gave you that extra little teaser afterwards. So I like that way to do it.
okay.
Very cool. Now, when you were on Cartoonist by Night, you were just kind of revealing the production and then the near release of the California Kids. And at this moment, it is released because I know myself and Kirby have these here. So we're talking about the California Kids, The Summer Begins, and The Journey South. So do you want to kind of talk about what this project is? And this is the main reason why you're here on the show. So let's hear it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you guys have the official first prints of that ever. So Yeah, the California Kids, it's a long project in the making. It started in 2015, and it slowly grew. The kernel idea is there's a group of kids. Those are the 4 kids right there. They're called the Beach Kids. It's summer vacation, and their parents let them live on the beach for the entire summer. No parents allowed type of thing. And a lot of these old the Little Rascals, Fat Albert and his gang. If you think of like Sandlot, these stories where the kids are just being kids out in the world and exploring and learning about themselves and others. And they go on these adventures. They learn about their environments. They discover a couple things where they get some powers. So there is sort of this fantastical element to it. They are able to turn into warrior forms. And then there's sort of a historical cultural underpinning to the whole thing. And it's not labored, or belabored is probably the right word, in the story. And it has, on a very basic level, to do with California settlement history and also cultural and ethnic history too. So, and I think there's sort of a model, at least in this work, for other states can do this with their own history and their own cultural traditions and stuff through the eyes of kids. And that would be interesting if that ever came about from other artists or something.
Oh, sure.
But yeah.
Cool. Jump over to Kirby. Your audio real quick.
Second time in my life. Non-California kids, I always start out with a question right off the bat. I'd like to know if you were published with anything in your early days, whether it was written, art-wise, something you did with school, or something that got noticed in the public's eye.
Yeah, definitely in high school. A lot of my art was received some attention from local like news stations and newspapers and stuff like that. I was in some art contests and stuff. And then throughout, because I went to graduate school for too many years, I think it was like 11 years altogether. It was ridiculous, but I had to write a lot of essays, and that's what I attribute my writing skills to, that process, constructing essays and paragraphs and stories and stuff like that. But I had to publish a lot of papers and go to conferences and present that research. So I did publish some articles that way. And then, but my first sort of public outside of school publishing would be the conversion stories ones. So the Tales from the Barred Iron Tongue, and that's more of a fictional narrative voice type of stuff. So
did your daughter keep up with her drawing? Is she still drawing today? Today?
Yeah, she's still drawing. On my YouTube channel, some of you may have seen, I'm doing these sort of tutorials. I did how to draw strawberry shortcake, how to draw the purple pie man. I'm going to do Margaret from Dennis next. And so I sort of test them out, the videos out a little bit on her. I don't shoot the video initially. I do the drawing, break it down into parts, and then so she's still drawing. And yeah, it's amazing to see what kids come up with. Even if it's not like obviously it's not trained, right? The skills and stuff. And because they're not aware of all these rules and stuff, they capture such fun things. So she's always doing that still. So
possible future daughter father collaboration, little book coming out or something.
That would be fun. She has a story with art that she did in 4th grade, and it's called Dinner with the Neighbor Next Door. And I've tried to push her a little bit to complete it, and she got to a point and then she lost interest. But it's a really fun story, and it gets dark. I was shocked that that she was able to think of such like sort of dark themes. A lady turned sort of into a witch, and it's almost like a grim fairy tale of like an oven, and the room starts spinning, and so
Right.
but yeah, it's a
It's
lot of
kind of like father, like daughter, because in these books, I mean, there's moments where I'm expecting it to go way darker, something to
oh yeah.
happen. I was worried like some historical stuff was going to get damaged at one point. I was worried
Oh
someone was going to possibly fall from a certain area and stuff like that. But yeah, you definitely get the mind going with the way you lay out the story on it. So,
oh good. I'm curious about what was it the Indian village?
yeah, I was so worried that the Sparks were going to end up doing something.
Oh geez, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Like, oh no, not a historic area. Don't destroy.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the kids go into these so sometimes historic, sometimes just landscape, and they have this initial sort of response to it, like, wait, this looks a little bit old. We should be cautious. But they're kids too, and they don't
Yep.
think things through. And so yeah, there's a bit of that tension with heights is the other scene.
Yeah. Throwing rocks through old house windows and stuff like that. We always did stupid things.
Yeah, exactly.
And when coming up with the California Kids, was there a certain point in developing the story that made you want to do it in prose opposed to doing it as a comic? Was it just the overall size of it all? And so kind of talk about why it exists the way it exists.
Yeah, that's a good question. The art has always preceded the story. So I have I won't show everything here, but I have folders and folders of art for it. And so in the story here, this is just the for the California Kids itself. Let me open it up and I'll just give a quick flip through. Um, but I mean, so these are like, some of them are scenes that I did use and some that I didn't use, but it's just pages and pages of, um, ideas and stuff. So I think it could function as a comic, but I think the story was too long for a comic. But the art has always sort of proceeded in that I've drawn the characters and their clothes and their places, and that sort of spurs the ideas for more of the story. And then this is the second folder that I have that's has all the different. This is stuff from the second journey south. You have the train ride. If anybody knows the James Dean train ride out to Monterey from, oh, it's a classic film. I should know this title. I'm thinking of Mice and Men, but that's another one. Anyways, that's sort of the inspiration behind the train ride. But yeah, these folders are just filled with art, and I wanted it to be the story to be in prose so I can explain it all, but also to have this visual presence so that you can sort of follow it in a visual way too. And then there are the coloring books that are connected to it, where it has the kids and their warrior forms. And that's for, kids and adults to color, or also sort of learn about the characters.
Yeah, that was actually the next direction I was taking. This was mentioning the coloring books. You've got them for all the different group of kids here, and obviously with your stuff and with the name of Happy Wolf Art, it feels very natural that coloring books would be part of
Yeah.
part of that branding. So yeah, do you have any history with just like why you want to include coloring pages, just to kind of get the kids involved? It's something from your childhood that you were fond of, things like that.
Yeah, all of that, definitely. These, but they also function as a way so for people to look at the individual groups and then to know their warrior forms, and then there's history behind their warrior forms too. So each of the kid groups are ethnic, a certain ethnic group, and then within those ethnic groups they have their own individual histories and sort of and cultural traditions, and they're not monolithic. So in the sense of like the peer kids, they have a Hispanic background, but they're not all from Mexico or from Spain. the Latin culture is spread throughout the world. So like that image right there, the beanie and the piranha, that has like an Amazonian piranha background, and that's her family's cultural tradition stretches back into South America. And those things, those parts of the story, they're not told in incredible detail in the story, but through conversations they're referenced, and there's this cultural underpinning. And so one of the big things, and this is a conflict point in the story, is the history of California and how it became part of the United States. And it used to obviously belong to Mexico. And so some of the kids have been taught by their parents, like the land was stolen from us, right? There's that historical narrative. And instead of having adults trying to figure it out, the kids are trying to figure this stuff out. And they're having these sort of big conversations, but on sort of a 10, 11-year-old level, and how to deal with them and make sense of it all. And then the ultimate goal at the end of it, so the 2 parts are out, it's a 4-part series, is going to be the cultural tapestry of California, how we've all come together and created our own sort of cultural traditions. Not everybody ascribes to all of them, but if you think of like surfing and skating culture, there's a very hip hop element to it. And those cultures have merged and blended and stuff like that. And so it touches on a lot of those topics and themes in a very basic way. It's not belabored or preachy or anything like that. So
Yeah, I think you did a good job with just kind of catching, like the dialogue, the dialect, and just kind of showing all those different cultures. Now, it's been quite a while since I've read something prose. I've been, a big comics reader. I definitely, got a stack of novels that I have to get to yet. But the fact that I read these and each part in one sitting is my review to you, saying how much I really enjoyed reading it. It was I like the humor thrown in, the adventureness, a lot of the lightheartedness, but then you kind of, crept in with, a lot of the serious, lessons and stuff like that, and learning
Yeah.
about the cultures, but kind of like what you said, it didn't feel preachy in that sense. It was all just orchestrated throughout the story. So I really enjoyed that. And it was fun to kind of, you know, seeing that part 1 and just kind of, having it wrap up and almost exist by itself, but knowing, oh, there's a whole nother part 2 here. Like it had some good closure to it, but then,
Oh.
leaving it open to jump into, continuing on with the summer and the adventures and meeting the other kids and stuff. So yeah, I gotta say I very much enjoyed those stories.
Oh wow, that's great to hear that you in one reading or one sitting or whatever. That's that you
I
sort
did
of
did
dove
one
into.
part. Yeah, I did one part in one day and one part the next day. But yeah, it like I said, part of it, and I know me and Kirby have commented on it. Opening up and just being like, there's a lot of words here, and we have to. The comic book club has to shift the gears here, but I think it
Yeah.
was all obviously it was service to the story and kind of fleshing out the story, and there's a lot of characters to deal with, so it was very fun to kind of meet everybody, get everybody's personality and such. Um, while we dive into some other things, if anybody else has anything else to throw in, any questions at all. But I wanted to just kind of bring that up and kind of talking about the California kids now that it is available. We'll get all the plugs once we get wrapping it up here, but let's jump back over to Kirby. What you got?
Yeah, as he was saying with the prose novel, I'm like, okay, well, no videos for my podcast this week. No comics are getting read, but yeah, I sat down and each book I was able to read in one sitting. And I had to finish up the last 10 pages while I was rummaging today with the second book, but because I was watching your other video last night, that took up time. But yeah, these are nice, quick reads for being prose style. I was surprised because they're a good sized book, and a nice thick book to each issue. But you said you used the creative process at school for a teaching tool and stuff. Now, did you go through the students with the whole books and everything, or just
Yeah.
use the characters? Or
Yeah, so I teach, or I used to teach German at Ventura College, and throughout my graduate studies. When I started the project in 2015, one of the things that helped me sort of create for the early parts of this while I was teaching, I didn't have a lot of time because it was involved with lesson plans, was I decided to use the kids for my part of my lesson plans for teaching German. And so this kernel idea of kids on the beach, I had to ask myself, well, who are they? And at that point, that's when I turned them into German kids because I was teaching German. And then I would develop their clothes and the color, of their clothes, their hair, their eyes, that type of thing. And all of these elements were following the trajectory of the class. So as students learned like the colors and how to say where they're from, I was taking the little beach kids and developing that storyline. I'm from such and such a place. I live here. I go there, like these really basic sort of sentences. And so in teaching, I got up to the point of the story where the hooded kid comes around, the guy with the hoodie, he comes around onto the beach. And then that's sort of the end of German 1. And so they don't know the continuing story per se, but they experience the kids on through the German curricula. Like Kirby, you have the books in German.
Yep.
And I did that afterwards. So that one right there, the first one, Texte zum Deutschlernen, that one are texts that I actually used in the class for first semester German. And it's all about the California kids and where they come from and what their interests are and stuff like that. So there's that whole sort of learn German with the California kids element. And then there's the fictional world of the story itself. So
cool.
Yeah.
What brought the idea of the whole German immigrants coming to California?
Yeah.
At first, I considered it opening a tiki hut, because when I first started reading, I thought for a second that they were actually selling food out of their tiki hut, but then I learned that it was just a hut. But yeah, is there any history with you coming from Germany, or?
Yeah, that's my family's background is German and Polish, and I'm not written into any of the characters. If anything, Carl is a little bit like me in that he's a surfer character or whatever, but nothing specific. I think there are certain little instances. So the tower situation from the second series, The Journey South, there is no experience of mine in oil fields or anything like that. But when I was studying and living in Germany, we went on a lunch sort of exploration with a bunch of youth from the town I was in. And they wanted to climb up this big tower, is 100 feet up, and have lunch at the top. And we had 15 odd kids there at the time. And I couldn't make it up the tower. I froze halfway up because of my fear of heights. So there's an experiential level, but that scene doesn't necessarily, I didn't live it. It's just that fear scene I lived. So there's little autobiographical details. The basketball game, I won't share the details of the basketball game, but the conflict at the end, I'll just say the body slam. That was something I experienced growing up playing youth basketball. So there are details like that that are autobiographical, but for the most part, it doesn't have to do with me and my life. So some of them are my friends' experiences too, that they've shared with me, or people I've met around and stuff. So
Yep. Yeah, that was a pretty intense area to do a body slam on the concrete there. It's like lucky someone doesn't smack their head or something like that.
Yeah, I was channeling a little bit of Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers. I don't know if any of you've been following that series.
Yep.
Yeah.
Checked out the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's throwing in some various wrestling moves with the Transformers.
A lot of his work had been influenced by wrestling. He's got his Do a Powerbomb series, which I think is perfection. It's such an awesome series. But yeah. And I want to do want to offer the condolences if you're if some of these characters are based off of your friend's experiences. Condolences go out to the friend whoever lost their lunch bag. To have that. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to Katie. What you got?
Yeah, so I have two things. So, I really identified a lot with the story you were telling about how when your daughter was little, like you'd be taking her to the park and playing, but also having this story running in your head at the same time. Because I also have that happen, and it's a very interesting experience. And it's not something that's like easy to bring up with other people, but it feels so nice when like other creatives, mention that as well. So I thought that was really cool, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And then
Yeah.
my second question is, I guess, what's the motivation to go from, hey, I have this story I made, it's really cool, and it just lives on my hard drive or my notebook, to I'm going to publish this. How and where and why do you make that jump? And I should frame this that I'm working with an author who I think has a ton of potential. They are going slowly to that jump off point. So what was your experience with that like, where you're like, yeah, I'm going to publish?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there can be a lot of fear, obviously, or
Oh gosh, yeah.
hesitation
Mhm.
involved in the process, because you do put yourself out there,
Yeah.
whether artistically or your ideas or your writing skills or stuff like that.
Mhm.
And in my experience with this project, what sort of empowered me, I guess, is it felt like a story that I had to share. I had that very strong conviction.
Oh, sure.
But also, as I was out and about drawing or working on the story, oftentimes I do it at the beach. Some of you on my
Oh, nice,
Instagram
nice.
have seen my so-called office photos of my feet and the beach in the background. But people will approach me and ask me about stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I've had experiences with two really notable ones. So, for example, I was working on the Pier Kids scene, and the Pier Kids are from the Valley, and they
Okay.
have sort of a Latin background. And I was working on some of the art, and I heard this really strong. And out here in I live in the Central Coast, north of Santa
Okay.
Barbara, but like Southern California, there's this it's I don't know if it's a tone, but you pick up on it,
Yes.
and it has a little bit to do with sort of a cultural background and stuff like that. And I heard a family, and we get a lot of visitors from Fresno and Bakersfield and stuff like that, and I can tell that they weren't speaking Spanish, but they obviously had Hispanic cultural traditions. And
Right.
the father of the family sounded really mean,
Oh,
and he was rough with the kids and stuff.
oh no.
But he was the one that approached me, and he said, "Are you working on art?" And I was like, "Yeah, do I want to show it?" Because my impression of him was he was mean.
Sure.
And and I was working on the Pier Kids, and I said, "Yeah," and so I showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh man!" And he saw the drawings and the clothes, and he knew instantly, like, "Oh, that's a tradition from here." And
Oh,
that like really sort of like, wow, I sort of struck a chord with him.
so
And
cool.
yeah, and then I had one other experience in Circle K of all places. I was
Sure,
working
sure.
I was working on the Park Kids, and Stutter Toes is one of the characters. And I don't know if you guys can visually. He looks a little bit like a disco character. He
Oh,
has
sure.
he has big hair, big square glasses, bell bottoms, and stuff like that. And I walked into Circle K, and the guy working there behind the counter was an exact, almost 100% dead ringer for this character Stutter Toes that I did. And
Wow.
there's a tension too, also, of like, who am I to write a representation of another culture too? Because
Mhm.
I'm not living in the culture. I only experience it from outside or through my friends or something like that. So I was really hesitant to show that. And when I
Okay.
did, he was over the moon. He was talking about getting tattoos of it.
Whoa.
And he used a lot of curse words in a good way. That's the
That's so cool.
and those experiences like really strengthened me because I didn't know how it'd be perceived. How
Sure.
from an author that isn't necessarily part of the cultural tradition, and they those two particular individuals felt that the idea of representation right now is, I mean, in the last 10-20 years has become really big. And
Yeah.
I don't write these stories from the intent of, okay, they need representation, I'm going to try and represent them. This is, it's just a story in and of itself,
Yeah,
and it needs to be told and stuff like that. And
for sure.
they felt really touched by the pictorial representation of it. And that strengthened me. So to your friend, if he or she can trust sort of letting others see little bits and pieces of stuff that he or she's comfortable with, then that can also really embolden somebody too. And so, oh, sorry, it's a long answer too.
No, I loved all of that. That is so cool. That is just
Yeah.
amazing moments of synchronicity of
Yeah.
you telling a story, reflecting the world around you, and the world being receptive to that gosh, it's giving me goosebumps. That is so cool. Thank you. And also, dream come true, being able to take your work and just decide where you want to work today. That's cool. That's the ultimate goal as a creator.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've been real fortunate with that. So the last 2 years, and this has something in part to do with COVID. COVID obviously changed our society. And that's when I stepped away from teaching just because of the difficulties of it.
Oh yeah.
And I just wanted to focus all my energy on creativity. And I was fortunate enough to have money saved and stuff to do that. And so for the past 2 years, that's all I've been doing is writing and drawing.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah, so it's been fun.
Excellent. Any lingering
Good.
things before we bring it over to the plugs? If anybody has anything, feel free to jump in. Kirby?
Yeah, I think you did an awesome job with the representation of different cultures and stuff like that. You weren't anywhere problematic with any of it. It was very well done. I don't know what the deal is with German history and leaving the kids out, giving up on them. It's like sun's up, get the heck out of the house is how ours was. Come down, come back just before bedtime. Don't want to see you the rest of the day. But yeah, I thought that was kind of unique and kind of fun how they were allowed to just hang out on the beach 24/7 if they wanted to. It's like,
yeah,
but,
that's the part of the story where you sort of have to suspend a little bit of a parent wouldn't let their 10-year-olds go camping for a couple of days on their own. We've all seen probably Lord of the Flies, right? The movie, and crazy things that can happen. But there are little Easter eggs in the story, and you may have picked up on it on the end of part 1 with the lights turning out in the houses.
yeah.
They come back to the tiki hut and they turn to look to the houses and the lights.
Making sure that the kids are okay.
Yeah, and so there is this and this isn't an idea that I've fleshed out, so I'm not sure where it's going to go, but they're the parents aren't following them around, but they're not just 100% letting them loose either. And I don't know if that will ever play into the story, but I mean, any parent would be responsible just to throw a 10-year-old out there to the world.
Yeah. Well, even with the first meeting of the two groups, for a moment there, I'm like, okay, well, the other group's going to go. They're going to tell their parents all this stuff. Parents are going to come together and there's going to be a conflict between the parents or something. That's what I thought was going to happen for a minute there. But
and that's been a tricky little narrative storyline for me to figure out, because how much of it, I don't want the kids to be lying to their parents. Do they tell the truth? How much of the truth? Do they tell the truth with an intent to deceive? There's all these sort of elements in the peer kids. When they go back to their hometown, you see a very clear division about who's willing to talk with their parents about stuff. But the parental role is sort of this, they just give some very basic advice, like maybe you should think about this, and then the kids go out and try and implement it and figure out how to deal with things. And but there is a stereotype among German parents, and this is again a stereotype. German parents tend to be a little bit annoyed with children.
Yes.
And that's my experience, not only growing up but living in Germany. Children are not to be seen or heard too much in certain areas of Germany. Even like the public schools here in the United States, you'll see a big school with green grass and playgrounds and all that. You don't see the elementary schools. They're very closed into buildings, and they don't want to be heard and seen as much.
It's just nine fences.
It's just a strange cultural tradition, and some parents can't be bothered by the kids, and that's just how it is. And I don't bring that mode into this story per se. I think the parents all care about their kids in the story. What interaction they have is that it shows.
Yeah, they definitely have that feeling to them. It's like, but yeah, I grew up with the just get away from us type feeling, so I was used to that. But I gotta know, Germans and surfing, how did that ever come?
Yeah, and Vikings in California, right?
Yeah,
None of it makes sense. It's just a confluence of interests of mine really coming together. Yeah, there's this sort of Viking element because they turn into warriors at some point. They find this coin, and yeah, none of that. They don't fit together. There is a German immigration history to the United States, obviously more in the Midwest that you guys would know about, right? In Minnesota, Michigan, and that's
we're huge with German and Polish heritage up here.
Yeah, and that's where my family comes from, Wisconsin and Michigan. We came out during this Second World War. So my grandfather, that was after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and all that. And he wanted to enlist and be in the war. And so that's when our family came out. And, the San Bernardino Mountains in California, a lot of people love the area because you have the beach, you have the sort of the valley, and then you have the mountains, so you can go to the coast or the snow.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about the state. But our family's tradition was, my grandma specifically, she felt very trapped by the geography of California, this huge mountain range behind her and the coast in front of her. And to me, that was always home and what I loved. But to her is very sort of confining, and she wanted to get out of it. So it's really interesting, all that history.
Yeah, it's a wide range of stuff because you can basically be surfing 1 minute and you can be up in Squaw Valley ski area skiing in the mountains the next.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. All right. Well, if people were looking to get their own copies of the California Kids and To Fight a Hessian and everything else that you have available, how would they reach out to you to get that?
Yeah, that would be through my Instagram. So Happy Wolf Art 1. So there you go on the screen. Or if we can put in the show notes, perhaps my email address. If you're not on Instagram, I'll give that to Anthony and put it on. And yeah, that would be two good ways. And I do have a little artistic sort of representation of stages the kids went through, if you have one more minute about it, but I don't know if you needed to wrap the segment up.
Nope, jump right in, please.
Because comic art, right, that's what we're all about. And so for my particular journey, I came to comics particularly through graduate school. It was present earlier, but because I've read so much, I was tired of books, right? Tired of reading. And so comics was a way for me to read, but also get into the art. And so the California Kids, like this is one of the earliest version of, you can see that I circled this one right here. For me, trying to draw their heads just really quickly with some real basic shapes. So he has like a U shape and obviously circles and a pointy nose, real simple to draw. And then they slowly have changed. All the kid groups have went through sort of this metamorphosis process. Here's some early and you'll notice that they don't have hands and toes. So I went through like this Powerpuff Girl stage.
I was gonna say they remind me of the Fisher Price Little People toys for toddlers. That's so cute.
Yeah, and if you know, like, as you try and draw hands and fingers and feet and digits and all that, it's really difficult in proper perspective. So I left all that stuff off. This is some of their early little warrior forms. So they had this like bobblehead initial sort of stage. So here, speaking of Kirby's bobbleheads, because he found some good scores this week where they have really big heads and small bodies. And then I ended up on this proportion of 3.5 heads for their height. And then that's pretty much sort of their current measurement now. And so oftentimes when I draw them, I'll draw circles and that's sort of the stages. But all the kids, this is one of the pure kids in a very, very early version. And you can see me working on here some of their warrior outfits.
Very cool to see that.
Yeah. And all my little research notes about different ones. So anyways, the artistic journey has been fun too. So
very cool. Well, yeah, so definitely reach out to Kevin. We'll have that information in the YouTube show notes and in the show notes for the audio version as well, in order to contact him and get your very own copies of the California Kids, as well as To Fight a Hessian and whatever goodies he has available. Now, we want to take this little moment to maybe tease something that you have coming up. If you want to talk about what are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, currently I'm working on a story called Vamp and Kermuffin, a monster dilemma. So here's sort of a rough version of the cover. Yep, and that's that Anthony's holding there. That's one of the scenes in the story. Initially I was thinking of calling it a dollhouse dilemma because it centers around this little girl's dollhouse. And she has a vampire, sort of in the vein of like the Munsters. She has they're a monster family, and she has a little vampire doll that feels that her pink dollhouse isn't letting her live to her true potential. Her little vampire doll's like, this thing's too pink for me. I need like a real monster house. So they go dollhouse shopping, and various things happen in that shopping process. Here's a scene where this is a throwback to Back to the Future, the clock tower. So there's little Easter eggs in there, and this is at the toy shop. And then so this story all started because Kirby, you mentioned Archie's monster comic. I don't know if you remember this in an earlier stream.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about it. I was going to mention that.
Yeah, so you bought that cover, and here I have the picture of that cover.
I think it was Archie's Madhouse. Yep, Madhouse Comics. Yep,
Madhouse Comics. So this is the cover of that. And I remember you saying in one of your streams, you bought it because you wanted to know the story to that cover. And when you opened the comic, there was no story about that image. Is that?
Yeah, I was very bummed because it had some fun stories in it, but it didn't have a single vampire type story in it. So yeah, I wanted to see what happened with the girl with looking at the dollhouses and stuff with the vampire. I'm like, what's up with these two?
Yeah, and when I saw that image and I heard what you're saying, I was like, oh, that's one of the elements. I guess some people have mentioned being frustrated with the cover images on comics because they're not always what's inside. And so I start thinking about that image, like what could have happened. And in this image, it's sort of in the Munsters, it's the Munsters and these monster families, Atom families, they always scare and upset the normies, I guess, right? And so that's present in this image. And so I play with that a little bit and sort of flip the script on it in this current project. And then what's really fun, I don't know if anybody remembers these choose your own adventure stories.
I just picked a couple more up. I collect them.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
So in this, it's 20 pages of content, no sketches or anything, 20 pages. And the last 4 or 5 pages is an alternative ending. So it's in a sense like this choose your own adventure.
Cool.
What else could have happened? And there's this whole the spooky. It's not horror because it's very child friendly, I guess. The spooky element has to do with the dollhouse that the lady in the toy house shows to them. And visually, I use Beetlejuice's house as a reference. So there's a couple little things throughout the piece that refer to some of these fun cultural things that we all love. So
very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be excited to see that when it comes out. So yeah, definitely reach out to Kevin, ask him about purchasing your copies of that work. Kirby?
I was just curious because you left me hanging. I finished off those 2 books and I'm like, oh, I thought we were going to have a little bit of an ending here. And it's like, obviously there's going to be more to come. I mean, is there a timeline frame for? Is there going to be 1 or 2 more books coming at the same time?
Yeah, there's going to be 2 more. And this is the part where I feel bad because it's taken me about a year per book to do each of these. And so there isn't anything really immediate coming out, although I'm working on the 3rd part. So
it gives me a year to learn German. So
plenty of time to revisit the stories over and over again. So
yep.
So yeah, thank you for being on the show. If you want to learn a little more about Kevin Wolf, he was also a guest on the Cartoonist by Night show, so we can hang out. We draw and discuss newspaper comics as well as learning some of the stuff we heard here, but there's some other things that were left out for that show as well. So definitely a nice companion piece to check out both of these episodes. But thank you once again to Kevin Wolf for joining the Crimson Cowl Comic Club for this special creator interview. And and if anybody is checking this out for the first time, if they are friends or fans of Kevin Wolf, the Crimson Cowl Comic Club is every time we record, we talk about comic books. We have club discussion picks. We have weekly reviews. We go into the news where we go through the previews catalog, talk about the books that we're excited about. And you can subscribe to that through YouTube and iTunes, the Crimson Cowl Comic Club, and go to crimsoncowl.com for original webcomics and more. But that'll do it for the creator interview. We don't have any fancy goodbye other than saying thank you, Kevin Wolf, and we'll see you at the comic club.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Slimer.